The front door was open. He walked in. He's like, what's going on here? There was just like hundreds of sachets and we're all working away. And we're just like, hey, how you going? He's like...
Welcome to the Success Times Happiness podcast, a platform dedicated to engaging discussions with inspiring individuals aimed at nurturing personal development. I'm Richard Thompson, your host, a father, entrepreneur, world champion ultraman, and passionate about all things high performance. Our mission is to empower both ourselves and you to unlocking our fullest potential, recognizing that this life is no dress rehearsal. While I may not have all the answers, this show serves as our collective journey to uncover them. Today, we're sitting down with Raph McGowan, the founder and managing director of Bakslap, an award-winning sunscreen and lotion applicator to help you reach areas of your body that you simply can't. Raph has been featured on The Today Show, the Australian Financial Review, Daily Mail, and so many other news outlets because of his story. The story of Bakslap is truly remarkable. Today, we go into that story, how after tragically losing his sister Tess to melanoma, Raph was driven to make a difference, which eventually led to this brand and his journey. It is a beautiful story of the importance of family, taking action in your community, and using loss and sorrow as fuel to make a difference. We hope you enjoy our chat with Raph as much as we did. Let's get into it. Growing up in Wagga, in your childhood, adolescence, what made you decide to go and take a trip overseas at such a, you're 20 years of age, to spend so long finding yourself, or what made you make that decision?
So my family, 7 brothers and sisters, no one had ever travelled overseas. One of my sisters had gone once. Most of my friends had never travelled overseas. It was like a small country town. And I just knew there was a bigger world out there. And then a friend actually went over to the UK, spent 6 months, worked in bars, travelled throughout Europe, came back and shared all these really cool stories. So about 3 months after he shared all those stories, I was supposed to go to university. But that just completely changed me, and I thought, why can't I do that? So I saved up a little bit of money and decided to go overseas, and originally it was for like 3 months. That was my plan, to go to the US, have a bit of fun, visit some people, then come back.
And growing up with that many siblings and with mum and dad, obviously family is such an important part of that childhood for you?
Yeah, it still is today. I think family is the most important thing. I know everyone says it, but I'm certainly blessed to have such a good upbringing. Great parents, great role models, still to this day.
Where do you sit in the line of the children?
So there's my older brother, who's 4 years older, and then older sister, 2 years. Well, essentially everyone's 18 months apart.
Yeah, they had this sort of like a rhythm to it.
Yeah, and everyone that I say that, yep, mum and dad had 7 kids, they're like, how? They've got 1 or 2, but they just did it. And then there's a younger brother and 3 younger sisters.
So you're sort of smack bang in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then did you find that growing up you played that role of helping the younger ones and also being sort of looking up to the older ones?
That more so happened when I was about 16. So dad, primary school principal, great career, but then was diagnosed with depression. And for a couple of years he would come home and he'd almost just switch off. And so then I took on that fatherly role.
For all of them?
More so, not so much for my younger, but my 3 younger sisters who are in primary school, just starting high school. And I know that they went to mum because mum told me, and they said, we just want Raph as a brother, not as a father. But for me, it was more important to take the workload off dad and mum. So when she came home from work, washing was done, food was prepped, and their homework was done. So that was sort of a period where, yeah, I sort of helped them out.
How old are you when they told you that dad had depression?
I would have been 16.
Yeah, right. And what do you remember of that?
I just wondered, not that we'd ever have a go at him, but we might make little comments about why don't you help out more, or why you're just sitting and relaxing, or he'd be sort of sitting in the lounge room watching TV, just switching off, and then my sisters might be next to him arguing about homework, and I'd sort of look at him and say, aren't you going to do something? But mentally, like, he was...
This is before you were told.
Yeah, he was exhausted. And then it all made sense when mum knew, and mum sort of took dad to the doctor, and then at least when it was diagnosed, we all realised, and we're like, oh, okay, that explains why he acted that way or didn't act that way.
I find that an incredible, obviously, leadership trait innate in you, to be able to put your hand up and go, all right, I'm my role now has changed in this environment. How long did that stay with you?
Probably maybe for 18 months.
Okay.
And then he really got back to himself.
Oh, wow.
Found another job that was much more satisfying. And then I'd sort of go back to being the brotherly role. And especially for when I was 18, 19, where I was still living at home, that was probably a key period where my younger sisters still talk about it, where they would come into my room and they would ask questions about school, boys, life, and I'd just be an open book and tell them. And then it was actually a couple of weeks ago, Dad said that, because he came to visit, he said when I moved out, one of my younger sisters went and sat in my room, which was just empty, and then was crying. Dad's like, "What's up?" And she's like, "I miss Raph. We used to have so much like quality time in there." So it was great that I was able to reverse that role and be a brother to them again for those couple of years.
That's amazing. And so that wouldn't have been nothing going overseas then, that decision.
No, like I always valued family, but I always kept in contact when I was over there. But I knew I had to do it for myself.
Yeah.
I was sort of at this sticking point where I didn't want to go to university. I knew I had a lot of ability, but I didn't really have anything to put it into. And so I thought the best thing for me was to get out of that bubble of a small country town and go overseas and just see what happens.
So it was meant to be 3 months.
It was supposed to be 3 months.
How long did it go for?
5 years until I first came home. Yeah.
Wow. And did they come over, or you hadn't seen them for 5 years?
No, not at all.
Oh, wow.
Mum and Dad working full time, brother and sisters doing their own thing. There wasn't an opportunity for them to come over and visit me. So it was more emails, calls every now and then, and that was enough. And then Mum would always ask, "Oh, you're coming home?" And at the end of that year, I'm like, "No, I'm going to go to this country now. This is what I'm doing." So they were always able to contact me, and I was always in really good company, sometimes spending months with some like extended family. Yeah, it was amazing.
And then what brought you back?
I went and did a trip with my brother in South America. So my older brother, he left home when he was 18, went straight to university. And so for, what would I have been, 14 years old, I didn't really have a relationship with him. He'd come back once a year, and he was always your cool older brother. Going to high school, you'd be looked after. You always felt like everyone knew you, and your brother was like a sports star, first 15 rugby union, track star, everyone knew him, but a really good guy. And after he moved away, I didn't really have that relationship with him, and I wanted it, of course. And then when I was overseas for about almost 4 years, I was messaging him one time. He'd finished being a vet and said he was going to go to South America to travel around a bit and then go to Bolivia and work in like an animal refuge looking after pumas. And that was it. And then so I hung up, and then a day later I wrote to him and just said, "Can I come?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." So not really knowing him or spending any time with him for almost 6 years, I flew from Scotland, he flew from Australia, and then we met and we probably had the best 5 months together.
Wow.
And yeah, it really helped our relationship. And we always talk about that trip.
Yeah, right. And then from then you came back?
I went back to Scotland,
Yeah.
spent another 6 months, and then I just realised that it was time to come home, and I really wanted to use more of my brain. Like I worked a lot of different jobs.
Yeah, what were you doing over there?
So the first couple of weeks when I went to the US, I had enough money to get me by, and then I thought, okay, I need to find some work. And so I just went and put up a flyer in a liquor store, and it said, I printed off a whole heap of flyers and said, 21 fit-year-old male, can do this, like gardening, painting, listed all these jobs, happy to do whatever, put a phone number, and the first place I went into was a liquor store, and I put it up on the window because I asked the guy, and the guy, he was pretty much paralysed down one side, and he said, "Are you able to come to this address tomorrow?" And he said, "This is my house." He said, "I need a hand doing some gardening work, but my son is too lazy." So that was it. So I went home that afternoon, and the guy I was staying with said, "Can I borrow a car for tomorrow?" He's like, "Sure." So he found me a car off a friend because he didn't have one. And then I drove out probably about 45 minutes, big house. And his son was at college, and probably for the next 3 or 4 days, all I did was rake up leaves in these giant bags, and I just loved every minute of it. And then the guy at the end of each day gave me a $100 bill, and I was just like, I can't believe it. So that painting, I lived with my uncle. He taught me how to do hardwood flooring for about 18 months, then worked in some restaurants, hotels, did lots of painting, and just found all that work. And then that person would then tell a neighbour or tell someone up else up the street.
Yeah, the word gets around.
Yeah. To the point where even I was living in California, and then a guy messaged me who I painted the outside of his house, and he said, hey, if you ever come back to Minnesota, can you come and paint the inside of my house? So I went back, and he said, okay, it'll probably take 4 days. He taped everything up, and then it was done in 2. And so it was just really nice that you had people in these places that you kept a relationship with, and then you could go back and get some more work if you needed it.
Yeah. You still in contact with him?
He unfortunately passed away almost 3 years ago,
Right.
and I got an email from his son
Wow.
that he passed away, and his son said, I remember you and wanted to reach out because I know they thought fondly of you. You're an Australian, and then you helped paint the inside and the outside of the house.
You made a difference. That's beautiful. You come back to Australia to study?
Yep.
Why business? Why marketing?
I wasn't too sure. I moved back to Wagga and then started applying for universities. I'd never been north of Brisbane, and the Sunshine Coast looked pretty good. It was either there or Lismore. So I'm very happy that I selected here.
Yeah, well done.
And I just liked, because my background was more hospitality, so hotels, I just love the buzz of working with lots of people, helping them out. There's a problem, fix it. I just love that fast pace. So I still thought I might go down the path of hotel management.
So tourism.
Yeah, I thought that was it. And then so when I studied, there was a degree in business, but then the first year you could go do a diploma at TAFE in hospitality management. And I thought, great, a little bit of practical, some theory at uni, this would be perfect. But once I started university and I finished TAFE, I realised I probably wanted more of university, and I probably wouldn't go down the path of hospitality because I started to get exposed and ideas of, okay, you could have your own business or you can go and work for some of these big businesses. So that probably interested me more. And so, yeah, picked business. It was pretty broad.
It is such a broad degree.
Yeah, it is. And I felt that by the end of it, looking back, I knew how to do research, write a report, but still wasn't leaving that degree knowing this is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. Had no idea at that stage?
Not for my own business, no. I knew that until I had that idea, I would have to go and work for another business, and I'd want it as corporate as possible just to get a taste of that. Because I grew up watching movies like Wall Street and everyone's wearing shirt and tie, and I just wanted to know what it was like, catch public transport, work in a CBD. So eventually that led me to going down to Sydney.
Yeah, okay. And that was with SAP.
Yeah, I started with them. Or before that, there was a few sales roles, and I thought this would be great. Went for the interview, and the guy's like, you need to dress like this. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to pay. And I thought, this is wonderful. Then went in the next day, and essentially it was a call centre. And everything was just timed. You had to make dozens of call. And he's like, you've got to get past the secretary, speak to the CEO to sell these conference tickets. I'm like, this doesn't sit well with me. And then after 4 days, I said to him, look, I've got to quit. And he said, you tell me you're committed? And I said, I'm very committed. I've got a past of showing that I'm committed, but I'm committed to what I'm passionate about. And I said, this just doesn't do it, and it's going to come through and not be the best for you. So thanks very much.
At that stage, were you cognizant of the values that you wanted to achieve in business?
I would
was it
say
was it just a matter
starting
of
to
like,
form.
Yeah.
Starting to form.
And then what led you to go back to the States?
I actually did this trip to the States before I moved down to Sydney. So when I finished my degree on the coast, I worked for the next year, got a great job, loved it, but it was always only going to be like a gap year. And I was like, what am I going to do next? But I also wanted just to almost take a year out that I could enjoy it with friends. We lived in a house across the road from the beach. We'd surf 2-3 times a day. And we all knew, and we would say, this is going to end soon. Like some of us have finished uni, some of us are about to. We had a really good group of at least 30 guys and girls up here.
Wow, yep.
But we wanted to make the most of it. So as long as I was working, progressing the career, I thought, why not be able to enjoy it as well? And then almost at the end of that year, that's when I spoke with another guy. His name was John. He studied over here from the US, and we'd surf a lot. And I just called him on Skype, and I'm like, what's up? And he's like, hey, Raffy, he said, my best mate and I, we've been getting into cycling. And I was like, oh, really? And he said, yeah, tour cycling. I'm like, what's that? He said, it's where you carry all your gear. He said, we've done a couple of little trips out in Virginia. And I was like, okay. And he said, next year we think we're going to go and go across this Trans-American Trail over in the US. And I was like, oh, really? I hung up the call, and I went down and spoke to my housemate, and I said, John and John are going to do this. And he's like, what do you think? And I said, I think I might do it. I just felt like I was at the point where you'd studied, you enjoyed that, but what was next in life? So I called him back and said, I'm in. And I was actually, so it was only 4 months from when I spoke to him that they were going to do it. They'd been training, they'd been prepping, they had bikes. So in that 4 months, I went down.
You became a full-time cyclist.
Yeah, like I hadn't ridden a bike properly other than, say, up the street and back. So I went and bought like a hybrid bike.
Panniers on the side.
Yeah, and then had to sort of get them welded. Then I would start riding around with that, and I was like, whew, my legs, they just weren't used to it. Then I'd start dropping weight in there, just ride all the time. And so I felt like I was prepped, like went and spoke to a cyclist. He did a routine for the gym. I'd never really worked legs before. Like I felt primed for it and did a whole heap of research, what we might need to eat, what we might need to do. Then I remember putting it in a box and then, flying over and went to LA, then flew up to Oregon. And then one of them I knew, the other guy I'd never met, got together and within a couple of hours, it was like we're all best friends. And that was it. We put our bikes together and set off the next day.
How long did that trip take?
74 days we did it for.
How many hours a day average riding?
We'd get up usually just on light, and then we were very slow the first few days, packing our tent up, cooking breakfast. Most of the time we might do kilometre-wise, sometimes 60, maybe 110 on a bigger day. But if you're going up mountains, switchbacks, then...
It takes a while.
Yeah, it takes a while. And I remember starting that trip, it was all about our fitness and bikes. It was like, okay, are we stretching? Is the bike tuned? It was all about that. And then 2 days into that trip, we weren't very planned. We talked about where would we stay each night. And the other two were pretty casual. It was like, hey, we'll just pull into town. We'll find a bit of grass. We'll pitch a tent. And like, it sounds good, but huge oversight. Because you'd be riding all day, you'd be worn out, and all you wanted to do was sort of shower, have something to eat, and rest, or at least take in the day. Not first couple of days riding around a town for over an hour, looking for somewhere that you could set up your tent, but was also safe. So the first couple of days we set up outside of a gym out the back. People would walk by at night on the grass and like kick the tent. And you could just sort of tell that we were getting a little bit edgy because we couldn't really enjoy the ride during the day, knowing that where we're going to stay that night. And then that third day we pulled into a town. It was a long ride. We're getting irritable. We went and got some dinner. And then we're sitting by this river. And then this old guy came up and he's like, hey, where are you guys from? Looking at the bikes. And I said, oh. The other two were like American. I said Australia. And that was always a draw card. Everyone would always look and go, oh, wow, Australia, wow. It was almost like the other two were forgotten. And then he said, oh, great, I do a little bit of cycling. What are you up to? And we're like, oh, we're cycling across the US. We're all college friends. And he's like, oh, where are you staying tonight? I said, well, actually, we don't quite know. And he said, okay, let me grab my bike. You can come and stay at our place. And I was like, oh, okay. So we went and got his bike off the back. He probably would have been late 60s. And then his wife hopped in the car, and then we just followed him home. Big mansion, came in, and there was another couple that was staying with him. They set up this spare room. We all had inflatable double mattresses, and they said in the morning we'll have breakfast. And then that night we're all in bed, and you said, you know what? We need to start planning, but this is what the trip is about. It's about people, engaging with them, sharing what we're doing, not the riding. Let's not get too worried about that, and let's come up with a better plan tomorrow. So we got up that morning, a beautiful spread, and there's a photo that I always see and use where the three of us have linked arms, and that was really the turning point where we realised the trip was more about other people.
About community almost.
About community and ourselves and what we can share, not riding from A to B. Like that sort of became irrelevant in a way. It just happened. So that was it. And then from that point on, we came up with the idea where we would call churches of any denomination, because we would say, hey, we're three Christian guys, and churches and firehouses, and we'd ask them 3 or 4 days in advance, are we able to put a tent up? 3 Christians, young, were cycling across the US, and probably 99% of them said, no worries, we'll leave a key under the mat, go inside, cook what you need to, just clean up when you're finished. So that was it. So we were always 3 or 4 in advance. We had accommodation sorted. Then we could start to plan. Okay,
Is that you managing that with the two
that was a big
days?
input.
Yeah.
That was very much me, because another guy, well, they were both younger than me, probably maybe about 8 years younger than me, and one of them was so relaxed. He's just very cruisy.
He's getting to the town going, oh, there's a key under the mat.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
So the other John, he was a little bit more organised. He would do the calling, and then we started to figure out our strengths and also
roles,
the roles. That was it. But he sort of had his own input and was great value. but it just wasn't his strength. And he's made comments since looking back that he's like, I've grown up a lot since then. I'm better organised now. And I'm like, yeah, but it's probably early 20s.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, everyone has their roles for sure.
Yeah.
What have they done since that trip? What are they up to?
I think one of them's teaching. It might not be university. It might be another sort of college. John, the very relaxed one, he always loved music. And he's actually, from the last few years, really committed to it. He's playing gigs regularly. He can earn an income from it.
Yeah.
So it's really good to see that he's doing what he always wanted to, which was play music.
Yeah. Amazing. And then you get a call from home during that trip. Tell me all about that.
Yeah, it was probably maybe 60-something days into the trip. And then I didn't have a phone. We had one phone between the three of us. And then John said, hey, phone's ringing. And then he sort of answered it, and then it was my dad. And then he gave it to me. It was just early morning. I remember getting up, and Dad's like, pretty much just cut to it. And he's like, hey, Raph, well, my older sister Tess, who's a couple of years older than me, had a mole on her back. Her husband, who's a doctor, noticed it. They went and got tests, and it's come back that it's melanoma. And then he said they're giving her less than 11 months to live. And I was just like, what? And that was it. It was pretty short, to the point. And Dad just said, look, we're here if you need to call. And then I remember hanging up, and I just went over to the side for a minute, pretty upset, and then sort of wiped my eyes, put my glasses back on, and packed up. And the guy's like, all good? And I was just like, yep. Rode that day pretty much in silence, and they knew something was off. And then the next day, didn't really say too much, just trying to process it all. And then I eventually told them, and they knew something was up. And rode for another day or so, and I just said, I can't keep going. I'm going to stop at this point, which was about the 74 days. So it probably would have been another week or so to go. But for me, that was irrelevant. I had family living in Tennessee, and I said, I'm going to go there because they've got phone, internet, and I just want to keep across what's going on at this point. So I remember we went to a particular town, found a box, put the bike in, I jumped on a Greyhound, and then went there. And it was almost a relief to get to my uncle's, one, because it's family, but also just you can keep in contact.
And how long did you stay in Tennessee for?
It's probably like another week, and then I was able to get a flight and then flew straight back. Went to Mum and Dad's at the time. They'd left Wagga and they were living up on the north coast. Spent probably about 3 or 4 weeks with them, and I just knew that, okay, I wasn't working. I was flexible, and I know that I was going to be of help if I went down to Sydney.
Where your sister and her husband lived?
Yeah, and they had space, fortunately, so I was able to go and live with them, and did so for probably the next 4 months.
How was that when you first saw her?
It was hard because I remember leaving Sydney and sitting on her couch in a different apartment where she was living, and she was so happy. We were playing guitar together because we can both play guitar. I can't sing. She's a really good singer. And then I'd sing and she'd sort of say, hey, can you stop singing? But I feel like she was a little under the weather. And I remember cooking for her that day, and it was just a really special time before I flew out. So to see her with the weight of that news, yeah, like physically she hadn't changed at all, but just knowing that they put a time limit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My best mate, he was diagnosed with advanced brain cancer, and I can relate to that. That idea that once that news hits and you're with them, it's really challenging to get your mind around it because nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, everything is just the same. It's just that someone has said that that's the situation, and it's haunting almost that you've got this arbitrary time that someone else has decided.
Well, you just take it for granted that Mum and Dad, will have probably more likely passed before you do, but your brother and sister are going to be around for years. Yeah.
100%. And so that time that you had with them, you were with them until she passed away?
Yes. So, again, just the special family that we do have, I moved down there, and then everyone else had sort of made the decision, we're all going to move to Sydney. And so some took a little bit longer than others to change their job, maybe resign. My older brother had 2 kids at the time. He had to relocate his family, so he needed to find places to live. But yeah, during that 4 months when I was living there, towards the end, everyone, so all brothers and sisters, mum and dad, packed up, everyone moved to Sydney. We were able to all find accommodation, and then eventually Tess went into palliative care for a few months, and that's when really the family clicked together because we wanted to make sure she was never alone. And so that's when, probably driven more so from my mum, that there was a diary, we'd all write in, make sure when we'd sort of change shifts in a way, and then really look out for one another, that people were resting, because different people felt and reacted to it differently.
Sure.
So we really had to be aware of not only Tess, but also
The family.
brothers and sisters.
How they're managing that grief. And Tess had a child as well.
Yeah, she just had a little baby girl, Mabel, and that was quite special too, to be able to live with them, and almost raise or see what's involved with raising a baby, because she was only a couple of months old.
Oh man.
So it was like nursing her and feeding her and getting into that, and then at the point where my sister physically couldn't do it, it was again special to be able to step up and do it, and really help out. But Mabel's 11. She's living in Sydney with her dad. Like, she's amazing. And my sisters always catch up with her. And I'd say the best thing is that, and kudos to her dad, always mentions Tess. There's pictures that they took when Mabel was a baby with the family up in the wall. She's spoken about. He insists that the McGowans have a big part in her life.
Yeah.
And so it's and she's got traits. She always asks questions. Okay, what was mummy like? What did she do here?
Wow.
So it's really special that she hasn't forgotten, and that we're able to share that. And that's why eventually we'll get to what I'm doing now. That's why it's so important, because all of this I know she's watching and seeing, and it's all helping her form a picture of, this is what my mum was like.
Yeah, I've become very emotional. I don't know why. That is so beautiful, and I really appreciate you sharing that. And I know it's not necessarily a private story in the sense that that's what's driven this next phase of your life. But tell me then, pivoting from that, how long did it take for you to then think, right, I need to make a difference here? Because you first started raising money
About 2 weeks after.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks after, one of my younger sisters and I said, we really don't know anything about skin cancer or melanoma. People, after Tess had passed, said, hey, we want to donate some money. I think it's just a natural reaction that someone passes away from something. Okay, there's research involved. We want to do something proactive. So can we give some money to go towards research? So we set up this fundraising page, raised about $7,500 from her friends. And then my younger sister Colette and I were like, well, who do we give this to? Like, what can we do? So we started doing some research, and then Melanoma Institute Australia were based in Sydney. They're like the world's biggest researcher, and we thought, okay, let's go over there. We were welcomed in. They would take us through what the research they do, and what really stood out is that we're able to get that from the chairman. So an old guy, Reg Richardson, very decorated Australian, very philanthropic, and he was able to give his time to people who just come in, raise a little bit of money, and he explained how that money would be used, and he really left an impression on me. So we're able to donate that, and then probably the next couple of months, I had to start looking for work, so I went back to work for a bit, but I wanted to keep doing something in that space. So I went back to the institute and said, can I volunteer? What's something that I can do? And they're like, well, we've got this event, you can help with that. So then I was able to start using some of my skills that weren't necessarily being used at my day job, but like marketing, being creative, being able to reach out to people, especially because I was quite genuine and I had a connection to what I wanted to do. And so I did that probably for a good year, helped out. And then I was like, I wouldn't mind doing more. So I had the idea, so Tess passed in 2012, and then in 2013, I had the idea to do something where I would combine cycling, because that's the news. That was what I was doing when I found out about it.
Sure.
With one of their events. It's like a big walking event where they raise money. I thought, how can I combine the two? So I thought maybe I'll get a bike and I'll go to Adelaide, and then I'll cycle to Sydney in February, finish in March, finish in Sydney, and maybe I can raise some awareness that more people would take part in this event. So that was it. So that was the idea. I shared that with the Institute, and they're like, yeah, it's great. So then over the next 12 months, I'd go home from work, sit in my room, okay, I need a website. Met a guy who would do a website, and I was like, okay, I'm going to need a bike. So I started to share it with a few friends, and then I met this, he would have been almost in his 70s, an ex-journalist, but knew everyone. His phone, he could just contact anyone.
Yeah.
And one of my friends who I was working at the time connected me with him, and he said, okay, you want to do this? And he was very much a guy who wanted to help people who were passionate or doing something charitable, and he's happy to donate his time for that. And he just said, okay, what bike you going to do it? And I said, this is my bike that I rode in the US, still in my garage, I'm going to ride that. He's like, nah. He said, you need a proper bike. So he called his phone, he's like, Paul Hilbrick. Do you know Paul Hilbrick?
No, I don't know Paul Hilbrick.
He builds custom road bikes, built it for all the police.
Okay.
Yeah, like very well known. And he called him up and said, hey, I'm sitting here with a young guy, he's going to do this. Can he come out and see you? Paul's like, yeah, okay. And then so I went out and saw him, and he's like, yeah, I'm happy to help behind this. So he built me a custom. I'd never been on a road bike before,
right.
Never ridden one. And I was like, okay, this is starting to snowball. Now I've got a bike. Now I need to start training. So I called this other guy up. I forget his name, someone, Consacao, but it was a big cyclist trainer in Sydney. So I'd go to Centennial Park and I could join his group, ride 3-4 days a week. And I was like really getting into cycling and training because I had to make sure that physically I could do the ride, but to the point where it wasn't really something that was going to impact me because I knew there'd be so much going on each day, I could just get on the bike and do it. And that was it. And then started getting sponsors and call up accommodation. And then Toyota got on board. They gave 2 support vehicles, fuel cards. Then I said to my mum and one of my younger sisters, are you free for this 3 weeks? And mum was like, yep. And mum still says today it was probably one of the best times of her life.
Wow.
Being on the road, like we went to Parliament House, met like the Lord Mayor. People would come from Parliament House to wave us off, police escort through the streets of Adelaide. Like it was pretty surreal. And again, that was all about the people that we'd meet in each town, welcoming us in. And again, we were just doing something because we wanted to share Tessa's memory, but also raise awareness. And it just felt, for all our family, it was something practical because during that time that she passed, certain people were struggling, especially in our family, to be able to share their emotions. And this just brought happiness, good photos, good memories, a website that all of her friends could comment on, and I would just put it out there, leave a story. So it would be documented every day.
Wow.
We'd finish the ride. I'd be on the computer posting photos, and then you might pull over, do a radio interview. Then you'd be riding along, then a TV camera pulls in for the local news, films it, and then you're back on the bike. It was really special, and Mum just helped so much. She'd be in little hotel rooms prepping up food for the day. Yeah. And in the end, when we finished, I didn't really need a massage, and like I was quite conditioned. They actually were more stiff than me because they were sitting all day and just pressing, and they were like, Raph, sometimes you're only going 10 kilometres an hour.
20 kilometres an hour. I get that.
So it was really slow. So I think doing that, it was a success. It was very rewarding. And then when that finished, I was like, okay, what now?
And then what happened then?
I went back to work. That was with SAP at the time. It was a good job. And then I remember thinking about it and thought, well, I'd sort of had a little idea on the side. I started doing a business plan up, but I never really got to it because you'd work 50 hours, 1 week in Sydney, 1 week away. And then a couple of years went by, maybe late 2016.
Still feeling that.
Still feeling like I needed to do more.
To do more, yeah.
I had to do more. And like I knew what I was doing, but I didn't know why.
What was the primary use of funds for that sort of foundation for the skincare? Is it a combination of research, or is it or more awareness? Because skin cancer, melanoma, as far as I'm aware, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is a user, like it's a lack of sun protection. Or is it?
I think it's like 90%.
Okay.
It is impacted by the sun, but there's 10% that's still trying to find out why someone who never goes in the sun, never had exposure, still gets it.
Right.
So that, and at the moment, there's not a cure for it.
Yeah.
So this particular organisation was all research.
Got it.
They were in there and they've really pioneered it. The 2 co-directors of it just got Australian of the Year this year.
Wow.
Like they're making advancements because their sole mission is, and the CEO at the time, the chairman at the time would say, one day I don't want this organisation to exist because we have done our job in finding a cure. So that was their purpose.
Yeah, okay. And then, so a few years went past, you're still feeling this urge of wanting to do more. And what's the business plan looking like at that stage?
Lots of words, lots of images. It felt like, hey, I've got a business plan. But looking back, it was
still
something.
Primarily
It was something to be able to create awareness. And then I thought through observation, when I'd surf, people go to the beach, they're always burnt in that spot on the back. And then I'd sort of research, and there was, I'd say like a pretty basic product that a mum and dad had come up with for a different reason, but you could almost use it for helping to apply to that area. So I got in contact with them and said, okay, I'm doing some awareness activities. Maybe I could do an event and maybe I could sell your product. And they're like, yeah, sure. And then I thought about it and I was like, but then I'd be restricted. I didn't like the look of it. I didn't like how it functioned. I was like, maybe this is an opportunity where I can combine all of my ideas but do my own.
So you could see at that point that there was, and it was that it was challenging to get to the middle of your back self-applying sunscreen.
And because I just noticed so many people on the beach burnt, and then I'd sit there and they'd try to apply and they'd leave a spot, and then people would walk around shopping centres, especially in summer, girls wearing dresses and just that middle part of their back.
Yeah.
And then I realised pretty early on when I was doing some volunteering work that part of your back is the most at risk.
Right.
So don't want to get burnt there. And then probably early 2017, something just happened and I thought, it's time for a change. I don't think I shared it with anyone. I just thought about it myself, and it was a very quick decision. Once it came and said, am I going to keep doing this, do it on the side, or am I going to go all in? I was like, man, I'm going to go all in. So that was it. So I think I probably wrote a letter, sent it to the CEO and said, I'm done. Thanks very much. This is my reason why. This is what I want to do. I want to do more in this particular space. And at that time, I'd moved from like SAP to work for a not-for-profit. So I was already in that space, and that also helped my idea because in that particular role for that 18 months, I was raising money for their organisation, and I knew that organisation was changing lives, and the people that you were meeting with were the CEO of Macquarie, Rio Tinto, Goldman Sachs. You're going to their boardrooms in Sydney, the Premier, you name it. And I thought, wow, if you have something that you're passionate about and you believe in it, you actually have access to these people that can really help.
Yeah, sure.
Where growing up, these people were always like out of reach, especially when I worked for big corporations, you'd never see the CEO. And to know, then I started to see them more as like, he could be my dad. He's genuine, you have a laugh. So that almost gave me the confidence too that, hey, if I was going to do something that I was passionate about that was going to help other people, then I would have access to those people.
Yeah.
I would be able to approach companies, other organisations to get behind me because I go, hey, I did it a few years ago with a ride. Maybe I would be able to do this.
There's a common element to both. Yeah.
So that was it. So then resigned, and I thought I couldn't do this in Sydney. I needed somewhere that was a little bit smaller, that I'd be able to have an actual network. And so I thought, why not go back to the Sunshine Coast? I knew a lot of people here, had a good time here. So I just moved back up here.
Sun's hotter up here as well.
Yeah.
But there'd be more prevalence of...
It's the number one area in all of Australia and the world is Queensland. Just because the UV sits above 3 all year round. Yeah.
So you then put all your savings into prototypes, into the actual business?
Well, at that stage, had a house deposit. I was like, look, I remember putting down a deposit at a place in Brisbane, and I was like, okay, this is great. Got this corporate job, saving up, getting a place. And then when I had this idea, I was like, yeah, it's not going to happen. So I kept that in my kitty, moved up here, had no idea how to get it off the ground. And then so I figured that would last me because I very much am someone that's very conscious about where you spend money. So I was watching every dollar and I thought, okay, this is going to probably not do me for the full first 12 months. So then I had a van at the time, sold that van, and probably for the next 18 months, I just rode a bike. I remember going to meetings where...
The same one from
was the same
the custom road bike?
No, it wasn't. By that one, I still had that, but I still had the one with the panniers. So I rode that up here. I put like a diary in a pannier in the back. I'd usually had a new T-shirt that was ironed. I'd clip that on the back of me. I ride somewhere because it's pretty hot, take that T-shirt off, put a fresh one, walk into a meeting. So I was walking to meetings with companies about doing branding, but little did they know I was riding a bike to get around. Yeah, I don't often think about that, but it was a really cool time because I made it happen.
You had to do it that way.
I had to.
Yeah.
And if I had to have a car, I could hire it, and it was so much cheaper than that expense at the time. The car, insurance, rego. For me, it was much more important that was in the business, moving this idea forward.
Where did the name Bakslap come in? When did that?
So I never had a name for the first 12 months. I just called it Project X, which I thought was pretty cool. And eventually I needed to come up with a name because I was ready to start looking at packaging and I wanted to have a brand.
Marketing, yeah.
Yeah, so I went to an agency on the coast and they had 3 people in there. It was a really good deal. We workshopped ideas and they said, what sort of names do you like? And I said, I don't want back in it. There's some other products out there that have back. I said, I don't want back, something different. So we were workshopping ideas for names, didn't really get on one, went back to something else, and then one guy sitting there said, it has to have back. And then another person said, yeah, something like a slap on your back because it's, well, a back slap, if you look up the term, it's more like you're a mate.
Yeah,
you're helping someone out. And he said, it's very Australian, it's what you're doing. And I was like, yeah, I don't want back. And then someone else was like, drop the C. It's the perfect form of letters. Okay, then someone looked up, yep, you can trademark it, it's available. And I was like, yeah, okay. So that was it. So I then shared that name and 3 other ideas with friends. And I was like, this is my preference. These are the ones I don't really like. And I always put that at the bottom, almost just seeing. But then everyone came back and was like, nah, I like that.
Oh, wow. So you tried to skew it.
Yeah, I did.
Tried to influence the decision and it all came back.
Yeah.
So Bakslap, Bakslap.
That was it in the name.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, at some point came the calculations that you needed $50,000. Is that to get up? That was to get the production up to a little bit?
So the first couple of years, I was able to fund it. And then it got to the point where I actually had to place an order and start the manufacturing process. You needed packaging, some bigger bills. And then I thought, well, one way to do that is a Kickstarter. Other people had talked about doing a Kickstarter, and I'm big on planning. So I spent 4 months planning it from everything I read and made sure that we had a page set up. We went and got a little video shot. And then I said to a friend of mine, I'm going to do a tour because no one wants to, like, we need a story. This is a story, so we need to show it. So I said, we're going to do a road trip. But instead of this road trip costing us any money, it's pretty much not going to cost us anything. So I'm going to go to every town that I've lived in and have friends, stay with them. And then, so started with Wagga, generate some media, and then be able to build off that, share that media, get some momentum. So then we can go on this road trip throughout New South Wales and some of Queensland, and then we can bring it to life.
This was all for the Kickstarter campaign.
This is all for the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So then the idea, we had a launch event on the coast and got friends and family there, and we got some local media there. And once we got that local media, we were then able to chop up that film, the newspaper. Then I'd sent it to Wagga and said, okay, we're coming to town. Had someone help write the media release. Ex-Wagga boy, this is what he's doing, this is why. And it's a lot easier to get press in smaller communities because they're looking for it, especially if it's community related.
Yeah.
They're happy to pick it up and run it.
Yeah.
So then from there to Goulburn to Sydney, I was able to get on Alan Jones and a couple of other people. And they were like, yep, you can call in. And I was like, very adamant, no, I'm happy to go in studio. So I'd find a time, so I'd go in, sit across from them, talk, get a photo, and just make a connection with them, also that they're like their staff. And they've been a good point of contact in years to come where I can message him and say, I'm going to Sydney, I've got this event. He's like, no worries, Raph, we can get you in here. Yeah. So that was really important. Yes, I got all this press from it and then had a little tally each day and then everyone's messaging. It had a lot of momentum back in the days when everyone was using Facebook, all these comments, hey, you're still 8,000 short, come on. Everyone trying to round up and then a couple of days and then thankfully more money came in right towards the end. We got there and we were able to raise like 52,000 in the end. And it was pretty surreal because I knew that I was going to get that money. Our plan, and I just knew that I had to have faith that, yes, we were going to get it. So I'd already pushed go on getting manufacturing done.
Wow, okay.
So I said to them, okay, here's enough for a little deposit. So they were working away. And so I had to get it, but I knew I would. It did come in. And
where does that belief come from, Raph?
I feel like without it, I wouldn't have been able to get to this point. I only have to look back knowing that I can do that ride in the US, help my sister, just rise to certain occasions because I do have that belief that things, if you're doing the right thing, it will work out. If you're doing everything you can, I think just being raised as a Christian too, it's a big part of
I was going
my
to say,
belief.
do you think that even back when you were 16 and Dad was unwell, you still had that optimism and that belief that it'll be fine?
And that really comes from Mum. Mum's very positive.
Right.
And friends still say that it almost annoys them today. They could say something to me about, this is getting me down, and I'll just always spin it. Yeah, but what about this and this?
Yeah.
So I think it's just innate that, I only see the positive, and I know that, okay, there's a problem. Are you looking at it from this perspective? And if I ever feel like, this is too much, I can just look back and know that there's plenty of examples of where something was impossible, but it was achieved. So that sort of helped me just relaxed, and I knew I'd raise the money, and I did. And I know that probably a couple of days after, those suppliers were like, hey, we need to be paid. That 50,000 came in, 50,000 went out, and it was probably like $300-400 at most in the bank again.
Left.
But I just never let money be an issue or be a reason that I should think that I wasn't going to be able to achieve what I wanted to achieve. Because everyone talks about money, everything I read was you have a startup, you got to have this money. And I was like, it's not the most important thing. How do I get this message out there? And I always feel like the money side of it, it'll look after itself because there's enough good people out there that I'll be steered in their direction, which has always been the case.
How was that early days? Once you've had that production initially and the packaging and the orders coming in?
Yeah, when all that stock arrived, it wasn't prepared for it. All the stock turned up. I was like, this is great. Put it in a garage. And then we had to get all these Kickstarter orders out. Never even thinking that far. Like you think to the point of getting the stock here. Wow. Now you've got to send them out. How does postage even work? How are we going to get them to the post office? Like there were hundreds and hundreds. So I had like 6-7 friends coming around for 3 or 4 days in shifts, helping me package things up. No, we should do it this way. We should do it this way. Hey, there's no box for that. What are we going to do?
This is brilliant.
And then a courier, I think it was Fastways at the time, there was a local guy, and I called him up and said, hey, can you come pick up some parcels? He came around, and the front door was open. He walked in. He's like, what's going on here? There was just like hundreds of sachets, and we're all working away, and we're just like, hey, how you going? He's like, what's going on? I was like, hey, I heard there's a thing like a thermal printer. Are you able to help us out so we can put slips? Because we're handwriting everyone's address on. And it was so slow. And he's like, let me help you out. So he helped me out. He came back around again just in his own time to make sure we were set up. And then he went and told the post office, and he went and told some other retailers, hey, there's this product that is from the coast. They're doing really well. You need to get on it. So there was a pharmacy in town, and they were the first ever retailer. Before we even went out approaching, they came and said, hey, we'd love to stock your product. And I was like, what?
Yeah, right. That's awesome.
So it's very exciting.
Yeah. And then that fueled the next lot of production?
Yeah, it took probably almost 2 years for that first run of stock to be sold out, because I know I spent probably too much time, if you're looking at it from a business point of view, not concentrating on selling. It was on everything else, because for me, the product's always been secondary. It's the talking point. It's something that at least brings it to life so you can do all these other activities. So I just wanted to do events. I wanted to work with other people. I wanted to somehow get a couple of partnerships. All that took time. Had to figure out how to advertise the product. Like I was doing everything from scratch, learning as I went. And then all that stock went, and I realised, okay, maybe I'm going to have to put more time into selling it. But eventually it did. And yeah, that first year was probably maybe 90,000 we did in that first year. And then I was like, okay, we need to turn this around. And there were times when I wanted to do
90,000 items?
$90,000.
$90,000,
Yeah. So I didn't pay myself. I started in 2017. It was probably 2021 towards the end when I started taking a bit of a wage. Yeah. And it's still minimal today because I just feel like
pushing it back into it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then so I worked at a pub on Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and that funded me being able to live. And then the best thing was that gave me all Monday and all day Friday, just full time on the business.
Perfect.
So that was what I was able to do.
Yeah. And at that stage, you're wholly still the owner of the whole thing?
Yep, which I still am today.
Okay.
And it was very important that, I would say that when I started, there was a list of personal goals and then business goals that I wanted to achieve. And on those business goals, it was getting something manufactured, learning how to sell it online, getting into retail stores, raising investment was always one. All these boxes that I thought if I was able to achieve that with this business, by the time it comes to an end, I'd be quite well-rounded in the business space, and then that'll set me up to do something different. So the investment side was actually really fun because I got to speak about the business, learn how to put that together, and I always wanted either friends, former colleagues involved in the business because to get to that point, everything I'd done was through the goodwill of other people. They were helping me, and I wanted good people a part of it. It was never, this is mine. This is everyone's. They all contributed. And so you were able to raise a little bit of investment. That investment was, I think the first one was $2,000 I raised off someone. And I just thought, wow, the fact that someone has worked hard to have that amount of money and was able to put it into my business, which at that time, it was a drawing on a bit of paper, a bit of an idea, but they're like, yeah, we want to back it. So that sort of went on for the next couple of years that I would raise a little bit here and there just in order for me to keep one step ahead of what I was wanting to do.
You're doing that without shelling out equity percentage of the business?
I gave out equity. I was very adamant that I wanted to give out and that...
You wanted to share it?
Yeah, it was very, very small. Very small, but I wanted to.
Yeah.
Because if they were taking faith in investing, I wanted to give them something for it.
Yeah, of course.
And none of them ever fought and said, no, I don't agree with that valuation, I want this. They're like, sure, Raph.
Yeah.
They were able to put it in.
But more important to you to have those people that have been with you or involved, not a VC or any other big corporations that would come in and...
No, and I actually had some meetings with them early on, and you're almost dismissed because you're nothing more than an idea. You had there's no real media, you don't have partnerships, what is this? And I thought, okay, let me just put that away and one day we'll see if we get to that point.
We'll have a chat, yeah.
So I knew what I needed to do, and that I always use that as fuel. Okay, if they say that this is what they need, let me go away and chip out and build it. And I remember there was one very wealthy billionaire in Sydney who had been impacted and involved in the melanoma space. And I went to a friend of hers and I said, I need to raise some more money. This was later on, probably about 50,000, so I can do this, this, and this. And he said, put in a proposal and I'll share it with this particular couple. And I said, okay, I'm more than happy to talk to him. He said, no, just let me share it. And then in that proposal, I was like, this is what I need it for. I'm happy to, this is the amount, this is how much equity I'd like to give you. I've got a shareholders agreement, I can do all this. And then I turned up at an event and she said, we've thought about it, there's your check. And she said, we don't want any equity. She said, everyone comes to us and asks us for money because we know, or they know that we've got it. She said, you're the only person that has ever offered to give equity. So she said, because of that, here's 50,000. And I was just like, what?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Just gave me goosebumps thinking about it. Yeah.
How long ago was that?
That would have been maybe 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you've gone through the Facebook, like, what was that?
Like a gift guide?
Yeah.
That's when things started to snowball. So you actually had product. So you're able to start sharing the product and then you're able to do other initiatives. You started approaching brands that, hey, we could work together on this campaign for 3 months. And the product really helped because it starts with that, but this is why you did it. And then we're starting to do things here on the coast. And then again, just from involving people, someone at a business chamber, they were contacted by Facebook. Facebook was going around communities in Australia because they said, we want to actually help small businesses. You can use our platform for small businesses and we want to go to all these communities and we're going to share some local business stories. They're going to sit on a stage, talk to you about how they're using our platform successfully. And Facebook's always like, oh, this great platform, but they're in America, that's it. And so they got in contact and said, hey, how you going? And it's just these calls. I think that's the best thing about business is that you have a plan, you go throughout your day, and you just, there's so much that can happen, just the unexpected. Got a call and it's like, oh, it's so-and-so from Facebook. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Did I not pay my bill? What's up? Yeah. And they just said, hey, we're coming to the Sunshine Coast. Do you want to sit on a panel? I was like, wow. And as I said, I love planning. So spent all this time in the weeks leading up to making sure possible questions, making sure I was quite clear. Then I record anything I do, whether it's a pitch or anything, on my microphone. I drive around the car, listening to it. I just want to make sure that I give the best I can to an audience or whoever I'm talking to. Did that, and then at the end of it, there was a lady, and she was really cool, and she said, hey, we're actually working on something. This would have been August. She said, we're actually working on something leading into Christmas, and I'm just going to let you know I'm going to put Bakslap forward. And I was like, really? She said, just can't say much now. Just wait. A few weeks later, she called me, and she said, we've picked Bakslap as one of the 30 businesses across Australia, and we're going to showcase you about your product, but being a product and a business with purpose, we want to share your story. And I was like, okay. So I didn't quite, that was our first Christmas that we actually had a product and was able to share it. Hey, this could be a pretty cool gift idea leading to Christmas. We went down to Sydney. They built this set that was really cool, got all these photos, these video content. We all went out to dinner, met these other businesses. They did workshops with us. Then I went to Canberra, sat in front of all the politicians and on a panel and spoke about how Facebook's helping my small business, and it's so important that we have opportunities like this because, as we know, small businesses help run Australia, and then asked them for some help in other areas. And it was just pretty surreal that you're sitting on stage talking to politicians, like representing a business community in a way, and you're like such a small business that started from an idea on the coast.
Because of that, our sales, your growth is...
Sales started to grow. So the first year into that second year, it was like 200%. And I was like, okay, this is really cool. You got a spike, but we're very much concentrated on, okay, whereas sunscreen applicator, this is what we're doing. And then that next year, more orders were coming in, and I was starting to read comments online, and they were saying, this is great. I use it for mobility. I'm in an aged care home, and a nurse always has to come in, and I found your product, and now I keep my independence.
Wow.
I don't have to have someone come in. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And so there was another use for the product, and it was helping people. And I was like, it's all that matters. If you're helping someone, then that's rewarding. And so I was like, okay, I need to do something about it. Let other people know online that you can use it for this reason. So I went home and said to Mum, I need to record you using the product. I said, your head won't be in it. So she did. The phone at the time was pretty shaky. It was poor quality. I put it up. And I think that one particular ad ran for almost 2 years. I didn't touch it. And it was pretty much targeting 65 and over. And it was
keeping the independence.
Yeah, it was amazing. So that's when I was like, oh, wow, okay. There is a bigger audience than just sunscreen. But even though that's shifted into other audiences as well now, at the end of the day, they get the product. They can see on socials, website, packaging. There is that sun-safe message. It's very clear. The story's on there. That's the most important thing. And then to have those customers come back and say, yep, we've bought your product again. I don't need it, but I'm giving it to a grandson. I'm giving it to someone else because I want to share that message. So it's like you're helping people and you're still able to share that message. Double tick.
That's beautiful. Talk to me about 2022.
2022, like towards the end of 2022, for that next 12 months, I'd say it was probably the toughest year of my life. Tougher than in a way of like losing tests, just because it was like one thing after the next. Up until that point, starting the business, it was just snowballing. Everything was great. Little problems would pop up. You deal with it. And then it was like one problem after the next. You had a problem with a supplier. Someone went missing. Then you're out of stock. You're talking to an investor to help fund this growth in this particular area. It was like, this is great. And then something didn't sit right after a while. And then you found out that he wasn't in Sydney. He was in South Africa. And he was just, quite dodgy. But had already made promises, committed. And because of, like I see a lot of good in people, and because of all the previous people that I've been involved with, everyone was true. This was the first one that wasn't. But I'd already progressed using some of those funds that were going to come. And then that sort of held things up, delayed it. Some things happened with close friends and family, and I just felt like, wow. So the business really slowed. I was unable to fulfill a partnership arrangement that provided a big cash injection, and I just felt disappointed because I was not keeping true to my word. And to that point, all of my life, if I said I was going to do something, I would do it, I'd deliver, and I was just unable to. I was stretched trying to catch up, keep things afloat, rather than progressing forward. But no one knew about it. I didn't share it with anyone. probably a couple of people after it, but during it, family knew. Other than that, I was like still doing content, going about the business day to day, but behind the scenes, it was just this constant tightness you were feeling. Waking up going, okay, this is everything that needs to be done that you can't do. And fortunately, learning from the past, I knew, okay, stop, pause, this is how you're going to go about it. So I write a list and I put on the back of my door, here's everything that I'm thankful for, here's everything that I've got. It's like the longest list. And then there was another one, and then what don't I have? One or two little things. Those two little things could fix what the problems were. So that was it. So I was soon able to get rid of that stressful, tight feeling and start turning things around. This is my plan. This is how I'm going to do it. Chip away at it. And then over the next few months, different people would appear. And I've always been someone that if you get an idea, this is why I love exercise so much, because you're switched off and ideas just come to you.
Yeah.
If I got an idea or a person that I might be able to reach out to, I was like, yep, I'm going to do it. So I just act on it. And then thankfully they came back. And then I was able to turn things around. And then now back on track, all good. But yeah, I'm almost glad that it happened, because it would be a little surreal if over the last 6 years everything was fine.
Well, that's just not reality, is it?
No, it's not.
You have good times and really challenging times. It's easy to look back and, as you said, I'm glad it happened, because you can take a lot of good lessons out of it and a great experience. When you're in the depth of it, though, it's particularly hard to think, gee, I'm glad this is happening. You know what I mean? Because you are grateful for everything else, but maybe not the situation that you're in. How quickly were you able to turn around or make those lists and go, okay, I'm in the trenches here,
Yeah.
and now I have to create a plan to get out of it.
Probably took me a good month, longer than what it would take now. Now, with days, if there's an issue, you can follow that sort of process and it gets you out of it. But back then, I think just because it was knock after knock after knock in the space of a couple of weeks, and you realise the gravity of it as well, you're like, wow. But then once I sort of sat down after that month, started writing that list, I realised, you know what, there's some problems. But again, I'd reflect back, look at what you've overcome already, look at what you do have. Like, it's just such a long list of what you're thankful for.
Yeah.
I was able to turn it around.
That's amazing, Raph. So where are we headed? Where's Bakslap headed?
I'd say going back to that list, so you've got a personal list and then the business list, that checklist. I feel like personally it was checked probably almost a year ago. I just felt very satisfied that I was able to create something that helps other people and continues to help other people. It's sharing that message. It's been really good for our family. Tessa's name is constantly popping up. Her face is popping up. There's a book that will be launched in Sydney next month at a big black tie event, and the person who created that book took 20 stories of people impacted by melanoma, and then he reached out and said, can I include your sister's story in it?
Wow.
So I purposely haven't read the final edit, because I put everything in there, and I just, whatever it is, again, it's just another, I would say, an achievement to be able to then share that with her family, share that with her daughter, and for our family to have it and her friends, that only speaks positively about my sister, has photos in there. So I feel personal-wise that I'd say I feel it has, the last 6 years, been a success. And then business-wise, the next thing would be exporting, and then learning what's involved with negotiating like major national contracts. I feel like that's the next step. And so definitely concentrating on that particular area, working with some people now on that. And I feel like because there is no end to business, the opportunities, the directions you can take, you're always changing your model. It's what keeps it interesting. So people ask me, you've been doing this for 6 years now, like, are you a bit over it? I'm like, you got no idea. There's so much going on. There's no end to it. So that's really where it's heading now. And eventually I would like to sell it. I think it would be pretty cool to come full circle to know that I sat at the Innovation Centre at the university, day one, with a book, going, where do I start? And just having no idea. Fast forward 6 years to now, just knowing you have so much and that you're able to already share that with other people. They've got a problem. I'm like, yep, I've been there, tried this, this and this. That's a path that I would like to go into.
Yeah, the wealth of knowledge
when
and
I'm
your
done.
experience to help others in
Yeah.
early stages.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge.
And I think that's what led me. So I was based at the university, did a lot of work or allowed a lot of students to come and do work experience early on, and I still keep in contact with them today. It's very important for me. Anyone who's been involved with a business, make sure I give them updates and let them know how you've been a part of it. And I wanted to do a bit more and sort of fell into teaching. So I'm able to teach a subject or two a semester there now. And I just love that because the subjects are all entrepreneurship based, and just constantly letting them know that I sat where you sat. I had an idea, not for a business, but I wanted to have my own. And there are ways to go about it. Doesn't matter what your background. You don't need money to do it. Like, don't even worry about that. And it's more like if you're passionate about something, you can get it off the ground. And there's lots of people that will help, but it can be done. So it's nice to know that this is how far and how much I've learned in 6 years. Imagine in another 6, but the time will come where I'm able to sell the business, let someone else carry it on or do whatever they want to do with it. But I have a whole book online of, okay, this is something that I started, so I certainly feel satisfied with it.
That's amazing. Raph, this has been special. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story and sharing the business. And it's a wonderful product. And obviously, as we've learned, right, it's just such an amazing vessel to continue your sister's legacy. It's really lovely.
Thanks
Before
very
you
much,
go,
Richard.
some final questions. And the number one tip to give someone looking to be more successful in their life?
I'd say the theme of your show being success and happiness is happiness. Whatever you're doing, it has to make you happy. And that to me is more important than success, because that might have a financial attached to them. But if it's making you happy doing what you're doing, then you're on the right path.
Okay, I'll flip that then. What's the
Okay.
number one tip then to find that happiness?
At least having the idea that, so you're saying if you're going to start a business, or just saying life in
Just
general?
life in general.
The idea that just keeps, or the word that just keeps popping into my head is probably helping others. I just think if you're helping others and you're doing something to help others, then that brings happiness. It brings success. Yeah, I just think,
That's
and if
good.
we all do that,
We're in a good place.
yeah.
Number one book you would recommend or gift to somebody?
Okay, I've really started reading the last couple of years. I've read lots of good books. Oh, Papillon.
Okay.
Papillon. It's a book about a guy who was wrongfully imprisoned, based on a true story, went through all of these different prison camps, very bad, but he always just kept this positive mindset, and he just knew one day he would get out, and no matter what the situation was, he would just see it positively, and then eventually his time does come, and I've gifted that book to so many people.
Beautiful.
And yeah, it used to be my password on a lot of things. Papillon and something
Now
else.
we know.
No. Yeah, great
right.
book.
Okay.
Just again, a good message. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Keep at it.
Stay positive. Most influential person in your life?
Probably my parents. They've just always been the benchmark, both professionally. They've always done well at their job, and relationship-wise. I think they've just been the benchmark that the two are important, but don't put work first. Relationships need to come first. I know myself when those two are switched, that life doesn't give you happiness. So I think they've just got a great combination, and the fact that they're role models towards one another, that they're still in love, still showing those acts today in front of us after all these years in their 70s, it's just like, you know what? That is the most important thing, because no matter the good and the bad that happens in life, you're there for one another. So yeah, really value family and the loved ones around you.
That's a wonderful answer. And finally, a guest, famous or not, you think we should have on the show?
Famous or not? Great question. I would say a young sports star, Harry Jones. He's a race car driver,
Okay.
Porsche race car driver. What blows me away is that I was introduced to Harry when he was 19. He's now 21. He's just so switched on, so driven, but just so genuine. And you would never know it, but he spent the year in Europe racing cars, winning Lewis Hamilton, you name all of it, like the biggest events. But he's just so humble. And it would be great to get him on here to know how did he become so mature and just so genuine at such a young age. Because when I was 20, I was out enjoying nights, not thinking about the future. I could never have a business, anything at that age, but he's able to have that much pressure and lead a team at his age. So yeah, he would be really good to have on.
Awesome. Raph McGowan, thank you so much for coming on, sharing the story behind Bakslap. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Richard. Been a pleasure.
That was another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. If you know anyone riding their bike across the country, please let them know about the show. Until next time, peace.